Good afternoon, and welcome to this special event presented by the New York Society Library. We're delighted to be showing this early screening of the new film Love, Repeat, and then we'll have a chat about the creative process with its award-winning star, screenwriter, and producer, Bill Connington. Personally, I love a good romantic comedy, and it was particularly touching and engaging to see Love, Repeat lovingly showing us Manhattan as it was just before the pandemic, a reminder of why we love the city, as well as a nuanced evocation of romantic love. I'm sure you'll love it, and do stick with us after the movie for remarks and Q&A about its creation, and add your questions and comments in the chat at the right of your screen. Enjoy. What a lovely film. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm Sarah Holliday from the Society Library. I see some rounds of applause in the chat, with which we absolutely agree. And I am just here as your staff for this afternoon to say, don't touch that dial. Do please add your questions in the chat, and we'll welcome on stage our screenwriter and star, Bill Connington, whenever that is good for you. A word about Bill. Bill's play Zombie was made into a film that went to 21 film festivals. He is a lecturer in acting at Yale School of Drama and the author of 2 books about movement and expression on stage and screen, including the new textbook, Introduction to the Alexander Technique, a practical guide for actors. Bill has also brought his talents to the members' room at the library several times in the past, including for staged readings of Joyce Carol Oates' Bad Touch and plays by A.R. Gurney and Yasmina Reza. We're proud to have him as a longtime member of the library and pleased to have him with us today. Bill, if I understand correctly, you're going to give us a few general comments about the film and answer some sort of frequently asked questions, and then we'll take audience from there. So, thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here and sharing the film with me. I'll just speak for a few minutes about the film, and then I'm going to take questions from Sarah, and I know she'll be accepting some questions through the chat. As I loved the comment, Susan, I think you said, hey, are they finally recognizing how they feel? Yeah, yay. Yes, I guess that's part of that's the main point of the film, of the character of James. The problem of the film is he has trouble expressing his feelings, expressing his emotions. That's what leads to his divorce. And through the course of the film, he's able to come more in touch with his feelings, and that's what allows them to come back together. And to some degree, that's what happens with all of their family and friends who are also going through similar issues in their relationships. As you can probably see, the film is a love letter to New York City, maybe to the Upper East Side in particular. I used to live on the 88th Street between York and East End Avenue, and so I placed where James and his wife, or Barbara, are living on East 89th, between York and East End, 2 different buildings there. I also used to live on 84th between Park and Lex, and now I'm in the 90s in Madison. So I'm familiar with the neighborhood. And you could see many landmarks of New York throughout the film, especially the Upper East Side. The other thing that I wanted to capture in the film is the softer, more intimate side of New York. There's so many films that show the harder edge of New York, the toughness of New York, the hugeness of New York. And I wanted to show everyday people and their everyday problems and their everyday relationships. And I also was very lucky to have so much snow when we shot a couple of years ago. New York is so beautiful, obviously, in the spring, and there are many films that have captured it in the spring and the summer and the autumn. But I didn't feel that there were too many films that captured the beauty of New York City in the winter. And I was hoping for that, and I was so happy that we were able to capture so much snow. We shot the whole film in 12 days, which is a very short schedule. We were very lucky that it snowed so many days that we were shooting, but also there was one extra day that I kept waiting and waiting, and I had a cameraman ready with a camera to shoot it again when it was heavily snowing. So many of the scenes that you saw that were so beautiful in the snow were captured all in one day by one cameraman. We were very lucky too that we were able to shoot all of those scenes, or almost all of those scenes, in one building. That's how we were able to shoot so quickly. We had access to the whole building, so it was almost like our own mini film studio. We could be shooting in one room, and the crew could be setting up another room with the lights so that we could just move quickly from room to room to room. And that's a big part of how we were able to shoot so efficiently. We only shot outdoors, as you could see. The gay couple was just right in front of the building, and there were a couple of scenes in the private backyard of the building that we shot. And just a couple of scenes outside in the park without dialogue, because shooting dialogue in the middle of New York City is a challenge. And people have asked me why a rom-com, why this story, and I would just say that I love rom-com. I love the genre. One of the reviews, which have been very complimentary, have said it's maybe less usual to see a rom-com from the male point of view. Usually the love heartsick people are women in the film. So in this case, we have the male who's the lovesick character. And I think the other reason why rom-com draws me is that it's obviously light entertainment, but I was hoping also to show some of the more complex aspects of love, and also slip in the meaning of the film, which is life is short, and we have to grab love where we can and when we can. I can tell you that it's an interesting experience to shoot in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art at night, in all of that beautiful snow. And a small indie film does have the ability to shoot quickly and efficiently. A huge film has to get lots of permits and close everything down, but a small independent film can go in with a camera, a relatively small camera, and a small crew and a small number of actors, and just essentially grab the shots. So that's what we were able to do in front of the Met. I think that the cinematographer captured beautiful images of the Metropolitan Museum and along Madison Avenue. And then in Grand Central Station, anyone has the right to shoot there. You just get a license from Grand Central, and you promise that you will not block traffic flow. We were a little concerned, were people going to disrupt filming perhaps? And no, but they were wonderful. They didn't get in the way, and mostly they were just taking selfies and weren't paying attention to us at all. But it's the most amazing space, of course, to shoot in. And I always think of North by Northwest and Cary Grant when I'm in Grand Central Station. And then Times Square the same thing. We weren't sure what it would be like to shoot in Times Square, but people were very respectful. We had a very small crew. They didn't get in the way. The people who were interested just stood behind the camera and watched what we were doing. And again, the most amazing experience to stand in that, crossroads of the world with all of those buildings and those lights and all of those people around you, and to capture that as a part of the film. And one of the things that I remember the most is capturing the shot of the Chrysler Building. Of course, it's one of everybody's favorite buildings in New York City. It's such a architectural piece of art. And it was snowing very heavily, and there was also fog at the same time. So since we had a very small crew and a relatively small camera, I just looked up and saw the Chrysler Building looking like that. I've never seen it look like that before. And I just turned to the cameraman and said, "Can we get it? Can you capture it?" And in a few minutes he did. So that's one of the great things that you can do in indie film. In a large, big budget movie, you can never do anything like that. It takes many hours to set up the shots and set up the lighting. There was no lighting. The lighting came from the Chrysler Building. Also, it was important to me that there be diversity reflected in the cast. I love rom-coms, but often they're very white, and New York is very diverse, and I wanted to have that reflected in the cast, and I'm so happy to see that on the screen. Shulia, who was the woman who was playing my friend, who was trying to help me out, the blogger, Shulia Latour, an amazing young actor who I worked with at Yale. She was my student at Yale School of Drama, and this was her first feature film. And soon thereafter, she acted in Slave Play on Broadway, and she's up for Best Supporting Actress Tony Award this year. We were lucky to have her, and Sarah Megan Thomas, who is playing the cameo role of the girlfriend of Frank, has a film of her own, A Call to Spy. If you can catch that, it's a wonderful story about female spies in World War II. That's a real story. And I'm currently working on my next film, which is called Poughkeepsie is for Lovers, which is another love story, but a darker, more gritty story. So I'm looking forward to that coming out soon. And again, thank you all so much for being here. And now I know Sarah has some questions, and she's going to put your questions forward.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm seeing some wonderful comments in the chat here. I'm mentioning Carl Schurz Park and the use of Gracie Square. Very nice. So one question that we noted here, the question of how the snowflakes are floating upward in the courtyards.
Good question. Good question. I mean, it is one of the shots that captures the eye, and it was shot in the usual way. It was lightly snowing, and the snow came down, and I believe it was either the editor's or the director's idea. I think it was the editor's idea that as James, my character, becomes more in touch with himself, that this be indicated almost in a magical realism way, as in literature, that the snow goes up rather than down. So it wasn't, I mean, I guess we've all probably seen, sometimes there are in real life where there's wind that's pulling the snow up, but they simply that was a special effect. They reversed the footage. That's how that happened.
That's very cool. And yeah, one of our attendees is mentioning in the chat, I like the life takeaway of the movie to have an open heart. And I do think that suggests that rather than pressing down, it's opening up and the snow is going up. It kind of visually reflects that. It's beautiful.
Yes.
So I think our audience may be a little unrepresentative as an audience because, of course, we're all sitting here going, we want that rare book room, and feel that one of the really lovable things about James, obviously, is his love of books and his love of older books. So what made you make James a book editor and an editor of literary fiction specifically?
Well, in case you haven't figured out by now, I am a long-term member of the Society Library, and my father was a professor and author, so writers and the work of writing has always been very important to me and held a special place for me. I write plays and I write films, but I've also written books, so it seemed like a natural choice for me to make. And I see Elizabeth something here. Elizabeth, thank you for your comment. You're talking about the character being both restrained and able to emote at the same time. Thank you for saying that. That's better than one review that said, we've only had one bad review, and the reviewer said, the leading actor both overacts and underacts at the same time. So I feel like I should get an award for that. the other, but I prefer the way Elizabeth puts it. He is a restrained person, which I understand. I think he's an introvert, mainly, and he's surrounded by other people who are mostly extroverted. And that can be a challenge, I think, sometimes for some extrovert. Barbara, I think, is a wonderful extrovert. So that's part of their communication issue. So by the end, it's not like he has to pretend to be an extrovert. I don't think he does. But just be able to communicate to her in a way that she can hear it better. Yes, the rare book room. I mean, I think for any book lover, that's like a dream. It's a dream. So that's a room where he sometimes works. So he thinks it's kind of cool to bring his dates to the rare book room. He doesn't really understand that if you're not a total book lover, maybe some other more neutral environment, the first date might work better. And I think Susan said, what she gets mad because he gives her a rare book? That's a great gift. I mean, I agree. I think getting a rare book is a wonderful gift, but I think within the context of the story, there have been a series of things that happened between them. And I think that Barbara doesn't feel hurt, that she feels that rare books is really his interest. She's a classical musician. Maybe if he'd given her some music or something to do with classical music, that might, show more about her than himself. So that's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back for her. And it's interesting, I don't know if you all saw The Crown, but they used the same thing with Charles and Diana. He gives her a rare book, and it's the same scene. She says, what? This is what you're giving me? A rare book? That's your interest. So that's what that is about. And of course, to just finish questions about literary editor, I have friends who are literary editors and agents for literary fiction, and those are people that I just admire, and I admire that work, but also fits his personality a little bit.
Yeah. So, of course, you've been a writer now in a number of venues, as well as an actor, both on stage and on screen. Do you want to talk a little bit about how those experiences are different when you're talking about stage versus screen and writer versus actor? I mean, in this, you're behind the camera, you're in front of the camera. Was it a lot?
Right. And I'm the executive producer too. An interviewer asked me, how did you wear all those hats? And I said, it just had to be the right hat. A baseball cap for writer, a stocking cap for actor, cowboy hat for producer, something like that. I had to make sure that I'm in the right hat. But to me, there are similarities of your trying to tell the story. You know, the producer tells the story in a different way than the writer or the actor. But it's all about the storytelling. People do ask, you know, how long was this process? It took about 1.5 years to develop the script, and I did a series of readings with the actors, and it's wonderful to see things and hear things, and then you go back and you make changes. And then the post-production takes time as well. But in terms of stage versus film, there are the obvious things of the people aren't sitting there. You don't have to project your voice in the same way. In a certain way, things are smaller, although you don't want to contract too far in yourself. It's a classical mistake for people who are mostly stage actors in the beginning to talk too loudly, to gesture too loudly. But I was lucky that I worked with a wonderful group of stage actors, New York stage actors, who really just adjusted so beautifully. They were all so easy to work with, so intelligent, great senses of humor. So everyone was wonderful to work with. And there was the sense of when you're making the film that you're still playing for the audience, but it's projected into the future. It's not in real time. So it's wonderful to have these screenings. Some people get distracted by the chat. I love to see the chat. I love to see what people are thinking and feeling and how they're reacting and what questions they have. So the screenings and the premieres are great, where the work finally comes together with the audience.
Yeah, that pointing out the difference in time, that's really fascinating. And thinking about different kinds of creativity, you're writing a novel, you're writing to quite a ways in the future, presumably. If you're acting on stage, it's happening right there. And I don't know that many of us who are appreciators of these forms necessarily think of it that way. A comment, I was looking for Barbara's and James's first date. Did you envision that at all when you were creating these characters?
Oh, that's such a wonderful point. I haven't actually thought about it. I have a feeling that he did not bring her to the rare book room. And I think maybe at the first date, Barbara did a lot of the talking, and that he probably liked that. I think that he's, of course, Lena, the actor, is so beautiful. She's a beautiful lady and an intelligent, engaging person. And I think that James is a little bit on the shy side, maybe, and he's attracted to her vibrancy and her animation. So I hope that it was an animated first date.
That's great. So you mentioned your next project, which is also a film. So that's in post-production at the present time, or?
Yes, I was lucky that we shot this film, Love, Repeat, pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we would have been able to shoot it in COVID, or we would have had to take all kinds of precautions, which add a lot of cost to filmmaking. So I'm grateful that it was shot pre-COVID. And also, my next film was also shot pre-COVID. It's also a love story, but it's a different tone. It's darker, it's grittier, it's a drama. I'm sure some of you remember after 9/11, we were all told to have an escape plan from Manhattan. So these are, or New York. So these are people who live in Brooklyn, and this is set a few years in the future. And people are told you have to practice your escape plan from New York in case anything bad happens. So that's how the story begins.
Yeah. So that's something that you've been working on then, but not actually filming during this time. Have you found that during the past almost a year now, creativity's been good or a struggle? I mean, some of us have written that great novel and some of us have really retreated. Have you been?
Right. Well, again, I was lucky that we shot it pre-COVID and we're in post-production, so we're just about to finish the editing now. And then it goes on to what's called color grading, where you're matching all the colors and you're producing the color that you feel matches the mood and the emotions of the picture. And then it goes on to adding the music. So a lot of my work during COVID has been post-production, Love, Repeat, and now publicizing. It just came out December 22nd. We're still doing publicity. Now we're leading up into Valentine's Day. And there will be stories about the piece and Valentine's Day. And now doing post-production of Poughkeepsie is for Lovers. So that's been taking most of my time. And then I will be returning and writing the next film. Somebody at the very beginning of COVID, in March, said, don't forget, Shakespeare had to quarantine. And that's when he wrote King Lear. And someone responded, oh, right. So now I'll write King Lear.
No pressure,
so
right?
I'll do my best. I'll do my best to match King Lear.